What is going on, Pats Nation? You guys already know who it is. Patriots Global here, back with another video, and in this one, I want to talk about some of my winners and losers from the Patriots' first week of training camp, their 4 days of mandatory training camp. Who is standing out in a negative and a positive way? The guys on this list either performed in a way that either got some positive heads turning or some negative heads turning. Now, first one here is going to be Jalen Mills. Jalen Mills has been surprisingly really good for the Patriots, and at times he's looked like a legitimate number one cornerback. Now, I do expect the Patriots to play a lot more zone than man this upcoming season, which is uncharacteristic for this Patriots and Bill Belichick's defense. But when the Patriots originally signed Jalen Mills, people didn't even like him as CB1. Now he's potentially CB, or people didn't like him as CB2. Now it's looking like he could potentially be CB1 for the Patriots and do it at a fair level. Now, it's not to say that Jalen Mills hasn't given up any plays. I mean, as we all know, he did give up that one play to Devante Parker in the end zone, but that really wasn't on Jalen Mills. It was really good coverage by him, but unfortunately, it was better adjustment by Devante Parker and a better throw by Mac Jones. Those plays are just going to happen. You can't defend the perfect pass. Overall, every day in camp, we're hearing something about Jalen Mills. He's either having interceptions, one of which that would have been a pick six. He's also continuously having pass breakups. And so far, there hasn't been a point where we've heard Jalen Mills gave up a, 30, 40, 50-yard touchdown. He hasn't given up any big plays up until this point, and he's being used in a variety of different ways. We're seeing him as an outside cornerback, opposite side of Terrence Mitchell, but we're also seeing him play in the slot. Overall, we needed somebody to step up here for the Patriots in the absence of J.C. Jackson. And so far, it looks like Jalen Mills, he's stepping up. Now, speaking of these cornerbacks, my next winner is going to be the guy that's been opposite side of Jalen Mills as the starting outside corners, and that's Terrence Mitchell, who the Patriots signed to a one-year contract this offseason. I've been very pleasantly surprised with what I've seen from Terrence Mitchell. I was not expecting him to come in and at this point perform as well as he had. Now, he isn't a guy that you're constantly hearing about making big plays, having a pick six, or having an interception, or making all these pass breakups, or anything like that. But cornerback's kind of one of those positions where if you're not being talked about, you're probably doing a good job. It's not like wide receiver where if you're not being talked about, that's a bad thing. If you're not being talked about from a cornerback perspective, it's probably because you're not allowing any receptions, any big plays, and that's exactly what Terrence Mitchell has been doing. We really only heard his name come up in this 4th day of training camp. And the only times we really heard about him getting beat was, again, day 4 of training camp where Nelson Agholor beat him on a nice route. He got a little bit mixed up. Ultimately, Terrence Mitchell did let up a touchdown to Nelson Agholor. And then earlier today in the 4th day of training camp where Jacoby Myers made the catch of the day, catching a touchdown pass in between double coverage of Shaun Wade and Terrence Mitchell. But other than that, we've heard absolutely nothing of him. Quarterbacks are not targeting Terrence Mitchell, which is another really good outlook on how Terrence Mitchell is playing. I'll be very curious to see how he performs when contact and pads go on here on Monday, but so far, if we're talking about first week standouts, I've been very pleasantly surprised with Terrence Mitchell. Moving on here now to Devante Parker. This is probably your New England Patriots standout player so far through 4 days of training camp. This guy is making plays. This is everything the Patriots needed in N'Keal Harry. Everything they needed. A guy with a big catch radius, a big outside perimeter wide receiver with a large catch radius. Everything you're hearing about Devante Parker, everything you're hearing that he brought to the New England Patriots offense, he has showcased so far. And I've also been pleasantly surprised to see that him and Mac Jones have been on the same page. There hasn't been any issues yet where we've seen Devante Parker go in one direction and Mac Jones throw the ball in a complete other direction. For the most part, they've been on the same page, especially with that one big play that's on my channel if you guys haven't seen, where in the red zone, Mac Jones and Devante Parker connected on a touchdown. Devante Parker is able to catch the back shoulder pass by Mac Jones, make the adjustment. Excellent pass, excellent catch and adjustment by Devante. Really, none of these Patriots defensive backs, from corner to safeties, have been able to keep up with Devante Parker up until this point. And Parker gives the Patriots something that these other receivers do not give the Patriots. Something that, again, they needed out of N'Keal Harry for the last several years and didn't get. So the Patriots really need Devante Parker to stay healthy this upcoming season, because if he can, he is going to be an absolute key piece to this offense's success. Now, next up here, I do want to get into another winner. We're just going to go through winners, and then we're going to get into the losers. So this one is going to be Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith has probably been the most surprising player this entire offseason, a guy that needed to have a really good offseason because he needs to make that big leap in 2022 after an absolute terrible performance in his first year with the Patriots. Honestly, not just in training camp, but even in minicamp and OTAs, I have heard Jonnu Smith's name way more than I have with Hunter Henry. And Hunter Henry's still out there. He's still making plays, but Jonnu Smith is just making more plays than Hunter Henry has. I mean, on day 3 of Patriots training camp, and I actually have a video up on my channel of this play if you guys want to check it out, but he did a complete 180 in the air, high pointed the ball for a 20-yard touchdown over Kyle Duggar on a throw from Mac Jones. And this is just an example of one of the very many plays that Jonnu Smith has been making, especially so far while the Patriots are working with the red zone. It just seems like a day and night difference with this Mac Jones and Jonnu Smith connection. For some reason, it just seems like they are on the same page this year. I don't know what they did that's been so different compared to last year, but Mac Jones is thinking it, Jonnu Smith is thinking it, and the plays just are happening very naturally. And next up on this list is another really surprising player, and that's second-year safety, Joshua Bledsoe. Now, Joshua Bledsoe is dealing with, I believe, it was a wrist injury, if I remember correctly, that kept him out of his rookie year this past year. And heading out of the draft, I should say, after the Patriots drafted him, one of the biggest knocks on him was his coverage skills. And that's probably one of my biggest knocks on him that I had. But so far, he's looking really, really good with the Patriots in this secondary. I mean, with Devin McCourty not being here on day 3, really the Patriots just giving him a day off. The guy that took over for those reps was Joshua Bledsoe. And again, this isn't like we're hearing that he's making all these interceptions or pick sixes, but he's been a guy who is consistently getting PBUs, pass breakups. You know, there was a day, I believe it was second day of training camp, where he had 3 or 4 pass breakups on the day. Now, the question mark is, where are the Patriots looking to play Joshua Bledsoe? Because although he did get those reps for Devin McCourty in his absence, we've actually been seeing them play Bledsoe a lot more in the slot versus playing him deep at safety. So there is some question marks on where exactly New England's planning on using him, but he's showing that versatility and he's not getting beat. He's not letting up all these receptions, big plays, touchdowns, anything like that, and he's looking good. This is the type of guy who I really want to see how he plays when the Patriots have that joint practice with the Panthers and how he looks when the contact and the pads come on Monday. Now, to head on to my losers, there's not a whole lot here, but there is a couple. First off, James White. Now, James White didn't do anything that makes him a loser, but he hasn't been at practice so far for the first week of training camp. He missed all 4 days, and because of that, the Patriots are continuously having to adapt without him, just like they did for pretty much all of the 2021 season. Now, the Patriots signed him to a 2-year contract, surprisingly, this offseason, but he is no roster lock by any means. It was reported that that same injury that kept him out for the majority of 2021 is actually still what's lingering and still what's bothering him, and that's why he has not been present so far for the Patriots throughout training camp. When James White comes back, again, he's no roster lock. He needs to prove himself that, hey, I'm better than Ty Montgomery, Pierre Strong, Kevin Harris, any of these receivers out of the backfield, because the Patriots essentially drafted Pierre Strong to take over in that pass-catching role, essentially to replace James White at some point. You even have Ramondre Stevenson, who's trying to become an every down back, who's trying to take that next leap in his second year with the Patriots, especially as a receiving back. So there's many different options the Patriots are going, and many different options they could go if James White is not able to play for them, or they just want to save some money and end up releasing James White. Overall, he needs to get back to practice ASAP and prove that the guys that are taking over his reps, Pierre Strong, Ty Montgomery, Kevin Harris, Ramondre Stevenson that they are not going to provide what James White can. Now, next up here is going to be rookie quarterback Bailey Zappy. Now, fortunately for the Patriots, we're not in the same position as we were a couple of seasons ago where we needed a starting quarterback. You know who your starting quarterback is. No one's going to replace Mac Jones. Nobody's going to get in between the way of QB1. At this point, Bailey Zappy's competing for that backup spot. But so far through 4 days, he's been very, very inconsistent. There has been some nice plays. There was actually one really, really nice play day 3 of training camp where he was able to fit a ball into, I believe, Jacoby Myers through double coverage. Very tight window, super good throw, touchdown. Best play we've seen so far for Bailey Zappy. But very inconsistent, more bad plays than good is what it was described as. And he just doesn't know what type of ball to throw to this offense. He doesn't know if he needs to zip the ball. He doesn't know if he needs to just loft the ball. And he's just not on the same page as his receivers up to this point. Now, what I heard it described as was, you know how Mac Jones performed in his first rookie season with the Patriots? You know, a year ago from now when he was competing for that starting job with Cam Newton, he was being very careful with the ball. More dinks and dunks, dump-offs, slants, stuff like that to be careful with the ball. Bailey Zappy's not doing that. He's doing the exact opposite. He's trying to show off his arm. He's trying to zip the ball down the field, make big plays in order to show the ultimate potential that he has, but it's kind of biting him in the butt because he's having turnovers. He had multiple turnovers throughout 4 days of training camp. And again, he's either overthrowing his receivers or he's underthrowing them. And lastly here is going to be Kyle Duggar. Now, I will say, take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. Greg Bedard touched on this, and it's a point that I wanted to share with you guys, that Kyle Duggar's the type of defensive back who plays within contact. Unfortunately, these 4 days have been no contact, no pads, so he can't play up to par. He can't play how he wants up to his style because, again, no contact, no pads. But he's struggled a lot throughout 4 days of training camp, especially as the days have gone on. It just seems like he's struggling more and more, whether it's been receivers or even tight ends. It seems like everybody's just taking advantage of Kyle Duggar, especially Mac Jones. Now, Kyle Duggar on day 4 did get a little bit of revenge here on Mac Jones as he did intercept him for a pick 6. But day 3 of training camp, Jonnu Smith scored 2 touchdowns in the red zone over Kyle Duggar. Ultimately, Kyle Duggar, it's not that he's having bad coverage. It's just that it seems like he's having trouble high pointing the ball and figuring out kind of that point of attack ultimately. But again, let's see how he plays when you can actually play through coverage up to his playing style before we start to worry. But we're talking about 4 days of training camp. Kyle Duggar's probably been your worst defensive back. But these are going to be my winners and losers for the Patriots' first week of training camp. What are your guys' thoughts on them? Let me know in the comment section below. And who are your winners and losers for the Patriots' first week of training camp? Let me know in the comment section below. Remember to leave a big like on this video and subscribe to the channel for all of your New England Patriots news. But like always, I appreciate y'all for watching, and go Pats.